1:17 a.m., December 24, 2025. The 96L6E radar of the S-400 battery southeast of Melitopol flares a warning. A UAV cluster from the southwest. Target lock procedure is activated in under 1 minute. 49M96E, 2 missiles leave the launchers, and 90 seconds later, 11 targets turn into falling fire trails outside the kill zone. On the C2 board appears the familiar line, Wave 7, interception successful. But no one looks at the duty clock. 4 continuous hours without rest. The radar operator's blinking slows, his hand trembles lightly on the keyboard, reflexes begin to lag by the second. The coming mistake will not come from radar or missiles, but from the one thing no system can reload, the human brain under time pressure. Melitopol is the artery linking Crimea to Donbass, a narrow corridor boxed in by artillery and FPVs from multiple directions, where every movement must pass through the geometry of overlapping kill zones. Russia does not treat this as a single position. They have built an entire layered air defense network, long-range batteries with overlapping coverage, short-range protection wrapped around the radars, all linked through a centralized command network designed to react faster than any UAV wave seen before. The tactical assumption rests on firepower sufficient to counter any simultaneous attack, a rotation plan of 4 hours on duty, 8 hours off, ammunition expenditure calculated for a maximum of 30 UAVs at once. But no one accounted for the scenario. Many small waves, continuous, not dense enough to be lethal, yet numerous enough to deny recovery time. 4 defensive layers operate like a symphony. NEBO-M, with 600 kilometers of coverage, the S-400 kill zone at 100 kilometers, Pantsir S-1 with 30mm cannons protecting the radars, and Manpad's Iglo as the final tier, after each wave requiring 15 minutes to reload, check, and log. But those 15 minutes do not exist. The first wave arrives on the evening of December 23rd with a UAV cluster from multiple directions. NEBO-M detects at range, data runs through Polyana D4M1, the S-400 locks and launches. From detection to completion takes only minutes. No targets get through. The command room sinks into absolute confidence. The system operates smoothly, exactly as in exercises. Less than 1 hour later, the next wave appears with a different flight profile. Slower, lower. The radar needs more time to classify. The firing cadence stretches, but the result is still clean. The difference is noted, then quickly dismissed. After midnight, a smaller wave with erratic speeds causes priority algorithms to oscillate, forcing manual intervention. Reaction time increases noticeably, and one FPV slips through and strikes the auxiliary Costa 2E2 radar. The damage is not severe, but it is the first crack. After 1 a.m., UAVs flying close together create a merged signature that confuses the system, prompting a more expensive interception solution and forcing manual override. Targets are still brought down, but a post-launch fault goes unchecked. After many consecutive waves, hardware remains intact. Ammunition not yet depleted. Only the humans have begun operating on reflex, no longer fully alert. After more than 4 continuous hours, the command room is no longer operating on initial alertness, but on inertia. Every action still follows procedure, but the rhythm begins to lag, slightly slower at each step, small enough that no one names it, large enough to accumulate into risk. When a UAV cluster appears from a direction never seen before, the radar is forced to slew and re-establish the picture. In that brief gap, the targets advance several kilometers. The reaction window shrinks faster than expected. Most are intercepted, but one penetrates deeper than usual, reaching the edge of Pantsir's protective envelope precisely as the system is reloading. Just 5 seconds. Not enough to fire? Not enough to traverse the guns. The UAV self-destructs right next to the position. There is no damage, but for the first time, the time gap becomes clearly visible. The pressure does not ease. As the S-400 enters its reload cycle, interception responsibility shifts downward to Pantsir. Ammunition is expended in greater volume than necessary, not because the targets are difficult, but because the operator is exhausted. Bursts begin to spread wider, reflexes slowing beat by beat. When this wave ends, Pantsir needs time to reload. That time does not come. The next attack rhythm arrives when the crew has crossed its endurance threshold. From detection to target lock, from decision to launch, everything is slower than normal. Ammunition burns faster, effectiveness drops, but there is no gap to stop. A proposal to rotate crews is logged, then pushed back according to the plan on paper, a plan that assumes the system always has time to breathe. A brief lull appears. A few quiet minutes cause the entire command room to sag. Someone closes their eyes for a moment, headset still on, clinging to the fragile hope that the pressure has passed. But beyond radar range, the targets remain still, waiting for the exact moment. When the next wave arrives at significantly higher speed, radar detects late. The S-400 fires, but one missile does not leave the tube, an old fault left unresolved. In the final 5 seconds, no defensive layer is ready. The UAV flies straight into the auxiliary Kosta-2E2 radar, destroying it completely in a clean, cold strike. This is the first critical loss, not because Ukraine is stronger, but because the 5-second delay appears precisely when the system has no remaining margin. And what is now clear needs no words. Ukraine does not need to know exactly when Pantsir runs dry. They only need to sustain pressure long enough for time itself to betray the humans operating the system. Shortly after 3 a.m., the command room enters a state entirely different from the start of the night. Alarms sound while the duty crew has been operating for nearly 5 continuous hours without rest. Operators see the targets immediately, but their reactions are no longer instantaneous. Extra time is needed to fully wake, to fuse data, to make decisions while UAVs continue to close in. The delay is not large, but it is enough to push pressure down into the lower layers of the system. The S-400 still intercepts most targets, but its effectiveness drops noticeably. UAVs that slip through force Pantsir to engage under limited ammunition conditions. As this protective layer thins, 2 FPVs penetrate and strike the Polyana D4M1 command vehicle. For the next 8 minutes, the command and control network is disrupted, forcing batteries into autonomous mode and stripping them of a shared operational picture. Decisions become localized, priorities narrow, and every small deviation accumulates into greater risk. While reserve forces are still moving, orders are simplified to extend endurance, conserve ammunition for priority targets, limit firing at single UAVs. This approach reduces immediate expenditure, but simultaneously opens gaps at low altitude. When low-flying targets appear, the main radar suffers ground clutter. Pantsir no longer has enough ammunition for continuous cover, and the burden shifts to man-pads. Some UAVs are shot down, but others pass through and strike targets not considered critical. Backup power lines for the radar, resupply vehicles en route, and auxiliary communication nodes. Each hit is small, but each further slows reload cycles, command transmission, and coordination. Crew rotation takes place under unfavorable conditions. The incoming crew is more alert, but lacks time to fully grasp the state of the position. The handover is brief and fragmented, leaving uncertainty about remaining ammunition per launcher, radar degradation levels, and the current state of the command network. Meanwhile, decoy UAVs continue to draw fire upward, creating conditions for FPVs to approach from low altitude, where the protective layer has been worn down over many hours. As dawn approaches, the final strikes are no longer surprises, but the consequence of an operating rhythm forced beyond its limits for too long. Interception reports still show high kill ratios, but the position requires many hours to restore basic capability, and maintaining readiness for another night becomes unrealistic. The outcome does not come from a decisive blow, but from the system's processing time falling below the tempo of the continuous pressure maintained by the opponent. Early morning on December 25th, a Ukrainian reconnaissance UAV flies at an altitude of 3,000 meters using a thermal camera to scan the position. Smoke is still rising from the Kosta-2E2 radar area. The burn trail of the Pantsir ammunition depot remains clear. The Polyana command vehicle is still standing, but its satellite antenna is bent. Some S-400 launch tubes are tilted with black scorch marks, the remaining tubes intact but hollow, not yet reloaded. Ukraine does not destroy the position completely, but paralyzes it for 2 days. At a cost of about $2 million for UAVs, they force Russia to absorb about $18 million in indirect losses, including expended munitions, damaged equipment, prolonged repairs, and missed operational opportunities. This outcome shows that the weakness lies not in technology, but in the limits of humans and continuous operating time. Public reporting focuses on the high interception rate, while internal assessments point to structural problems. The system is not suited to sustained pressure, the rotation tempo is not fast enough, and the decision burden placed on operators exceeds safe thresholds. Recommendations focus on shortening duty shifts, increasing reserve crews, and adding automation. Long-term consequences have taken shape. A time-based attrition model forces Russia to disperse forces more thinly along the Crimea-Donbas axis. Each battery needs more reserve crews, straining manpower and driving maintenance costs higher. Near 5 a.m., in the briefing room, 11 pages of reports recording 11 attack waves over 7 hours are reviewed again. The final pages show a clear decline in processing tempo and operational consistency. The logistics summary reflects the missiles and rounds expended, and interception effectiveness by phase, showing that the problem is not stockpile depth, but the ability to sustain a continuous operating cycle. A modern air defense system operates effectively when there is still enough time for analysis, decision, firing, and recovery. When a continuous attack tempo compresses these cycles, system capability degrades over time. In that context, operational outcomes depend on the ability to withstand sustained pressure and correctly identify the opponent's operating limits, rather than on the strength of any single burst of firepower.